quick info about me. I'm the head of video on demand guides at Funke Zeitschriften. What does it mean? I run a website or a service called werstreamt.es. It's a streaming search engine. And we presented that search engine at the very first StripeCon in Linz. Why? Because it's powered by SilverStripe. It was back then, and it still is. And I love doing stuff in SilverStripe. But today's talk is not about werstreamt.es. Today's talk is about another part of my job, which is Alexa skills. And before we get into it, has anyone built Alexa skills in here? Show of hands, okay. Good, so then I can tell stuff and you don't know if I'm lying. Funke has a few skills. We have one of the most successful skills in Germany. It's called Fernsehprogramm. So if you ask Alexa in Germany what's on TV or what's on a certain station, our skill will answer. We're hardwired into the Alexa system in Germany, so you don't even need to know the name of our skill. Or if you ask Alexa in Germany for your horoscope, it's also coming from us. So we have quite some deeply integrated skills. For those skills, we have a developer that's really good in making skills, so I only manage them. We even have one with a graphical interface. You see that down there. What I'm going to show you today is a lot simpler than what we're doing there. And we just launched a skill where we're actually testing monetization so that we can offer the user inside the skill that he purchases a subscription and he gets like an extra value for that every month. Because it's a big problem right now with Alexa skills, how do you monetize on them? Just not having them just for branding or something. So all those skills that we're having live in production, they're running on AWS with Lambda in the background. What I'm going to show you today is how to do this with SilverStripe in the background. I wouldn't do that for like the most successful skill in Germany. I would not put SilverStripe in the background. But for smaller skills, this might be an interesting thing. So we're going to go over why do it with SilverStripe, and then give you a little introduction on how Alexa skills work. And then we're going to connect Alexa to SilverStripe. And then we're going to do a real-world example, because this conference needs a skill. So why? For me, connecting it to SilverStripe was just fun. I just wanted to see how it works and just figuring it out. But there might actually be use cases for it. Let's say you have a small business website, maybe a customer of yours, and you have highly structured data in SilverStripe. You have data objects with information that you could use. That's something that you can really nicely integrate into Alexa. For example, you could have a schedule in there. You could have promotions. You could even have, if you have a conference, you could sell tickets to the conference through Alexa. And you can connect all this to your existing infrastructure in SilverStripe and all the logic you have in there, your controllers and everything. So how does an Alexa skill work? There's different models of skills. You have smart home skills that control devices in your house, like lights or something. Then you have flash briefings that give news. You have video skills that play video content or control a TV or something. And you have audio skills like Spotify or something. And then there's a type of skill that's called a custom skill. Custom skill is something where you can build the entire logic of the skill. You tell Alexa the phrases that you're using to trigger it and everything. And that's the type of skill we're going to focus on today. So a custom skill always has an activation phrase. If you have like a smart home skill or something, you just tell Alexa, turn the lights off or start the microwave or something. But if you have a custom skill, it needs a name. For example, our TV skill is called Fernsehprogramm. If it wouldn't be hardwired, you would have to say, Alexa, ask Fernsehprogramm what's on tonight. So we're going to do a little demo here. And the activation phrase for this demo is just demo code. So let's do this. Alexa, start demo code. Okay.
Welcome. You can ask me anything. What would you like to know?
What is the best content management system in the world?
I don't know. Hold on, let me call a friend.
Brian here.
Hi, this is Alexa. Do you know what the best content management system is called?
Yeah, I think it's WordPress or something like that.
No, that's not it. I remember reading about it. Let me look. It was something with an S. I think. But I can't find it now. If only we had a room full of developers who could program the correct answer into my databanks. Will you help me? Please.
Okay, so the delay we're having in the responses from Alexa is because we're going over Wi-Fi, VPN, and everything in here, so bear with me a little bit. Okay, so Alexa needs help because it doesn't know how to answer this question usefully, so we're going to help her. Yoo-hoo. Okay, so I'm going to show you the interface in which you manage your Alexa skill. You don't have to do this. There's a CLI that you can use to send all the information to Alexa or to Amazon. When you seriously develop skills, you're going to do that. You're going to use the Alexa CLI. You have JSON files that define everything. You can version them. But to get an idea on how Alexa works, this interface is a nice starting point. So what do we got? A skill has an activation name, like I told you. This one is just called demo code. So that's what Alexa's going to listen for and know that the query needs to be connected to my skill. And then a skill consists out of intents. These intents, there's built-in ones, like every skill needs to be able to handle cancel if the user says cancel, or if he asks for help or whatever. And then you add your own intents. And these intents are like functions. So we have a hello world intent here. That's the only intent the skill has. And we need to give Alexa sample phrases of when it hears it, a text, or it's called an utterance in Alexa, that it needs to trigger this intent. So it's like if it hears any of this, it needs to trigger this function. So in here I have like different variations of what the best content management system in the world is. And I tell her that this is the hello world intent. And if Alexa hears this, it's going to connect it to my code. And the typical setup is you have a Lambda function running in AWS, mostly Node.js, that will handle this request. So we see here, like we have the standard launch request. This is something every skill needs to have if you don't tell it anything except for start demo code. And then we tell Alexa to answer with welcome, you can ask me anything, what would you like to know? And we tell her that we need a reprompt, so she's going to listen to another input from us. And then we asked her what's the best content management system in the world. So it got in here and said, okay, I need the hello world intent, because that's what we mapped it to. And then it just played this little audio that I spent way too much time on building. And then it closes the connection, because there's nothing else to do. So this is what the skill currently looks like. I can test this in here, which is a really nice thing to understand how Alexa works. Start demo code. So, and what we see here is the communication that's actually happening and the reason why you can replace the Lambda function with something else. Alexa is going to send a JSON file to the endpoint that's responsible for handling your skill. And in this JSON file, you get a lot of information about the device that's running. And the other thing you get is you get the intent that the user had. It's somewhere in here. Yeah, it's somewhere in there. And then we send back a response. So we tell the device what to do. All this happens in the cloud. The device is really stupid. It just connects to AWS, and it sends the voice recording there. They transcribe it. They trigger your endpoint. You send them the response, and they send the response to the device. So the nice part is we can actually change the setup of this skill. Yep, there under build. We have our invocation name, we have our intents, and we have our model, and then we have the endpoint. And currently, this endpoint is connected to AWS Lambda. So what we're going to do now is we're going to tell it, no, use an HTTPS endpoint. And I need my mouse. So we have a little endpoint set up that we're going to use. We're going to tell Alexa that it has a valid certificate. And then we're going to hit save. So I didn't change anything on the voice model. I just changed the backend that's going to handle the request. So let's do this again. Alexa, start demo code.
Welcome to the SilverStripe connected version. What would you like to know?
What is the best CMS?
Oh, that's easy. SilverStripe, of course.
Okay, I should have changed it in SilverStripe CMS, I'm sorry. Okay, so now the interesting part is what happened here. Let's find PHP Storm. Okay, so we have a copy of the StripeCon website here that I'm using for this demo. And I just added a little module to it. And this module has a route. So I told it everything that comes in on /Alexa, please send to my Alexa controller that I built. And this Alexa controller uses a third-party library from Max Beckers that helps me build the JSON for the communication with Alexa. There's tons of libraries out there. I just picked this one, but you can also use different ones. And then what we do is we get the connection from Alexa. The request comes in, we take it, and we pipe it through to this function that will create a Alexa request with all the data it has. We need to send it some signature information because you're supposed to validate an Alexa request to make sure there's no replay attacks, or if you don't want your API to expose these informations to anyone else except for Alexa. For our testing here, I disabled the validator because then I can do my own post requests on the command line or something. And then we have a registry. This registry, we put in all the handlers we have. Like you saw in the AWS version or Lambda version, that we had this handler that handles the launch request and says, welcome to the skill. And then we had a handler that handled the hello world intent. And we have the same here. We have a launch request handler, and we have a hello world request handler. And the other one we're going to worry about later. So what does the launch request handler do? Well, basically the same that the Lambda version did. It answers the question if it can support this request. So if a request comes in, this registry goes through all the handlers that are registered and finds the first one that says, I know how to handle this request. And then it tells us, well, if you know how to do it, then please do it. And so we send back text. It looks, yeah.
What was the next step?
This is just my own Alexa controller. And these are the handlers and like the stuff that we need to build this. And then the other thing we need to do is we could theoretically run different skills on the same backend. So we tell the handlers what application IDs they're responding to. So you could have each skill has its own application ID. And then the actual communication is the same as it is in Lambda. You just type in text, or you use this markup language to play sounds or whatever. So we have our hello world intent handler here, and it says, yo, that's easy, SilverStripe, of course. So currently our skill only has one intent. That's nice, but you want to have a skill that can do more. So let's add another intent here to see how this works. And we're going to call it, let me see, on my notes. We're going to call it the worst CMS intent. So there's pre-built intents, like I said, like the start or the cancel or so on, or there's custom intents. And when we build one, it says, well, when should I trigger this intent? And we're going to tell her, well, if you hear what is the worst CMS, then please trigger this intent. Normally, you would now supply different ways someone could ask for this. I'm going to make sure I'm going to use exactly this phrase, so this is hopefully going to work. So if you change anything on the voice model of Alexa, you need to rebuild this model, because the system needs to know the phrases that it's expecting. So every time we change something in here, we save it. And then we rebuild this model. So it goes through all the settings we have and uploads them so that the Alexa system knows how to respond to this. While it's doing that, we need to handle this request. So if the worst CMS intent is coming in, we need to handle it. So we're going to take our nice Hello World intent handler here and make a copy of it and call it the worst CMS request handler. Yeah, we want to add it to Git. So now we need to tell it that it needs to respond to this intent. So this one shouldn't answer the Hello World intent. This one should answer this one. You can put other checks in here. You could put like just PHP code in here. You could say up from 10 a.m. on, I want this handler to be able to respond to this request. And on holidays, I don't want this handler, I want the other one. So you can build whatever check you want in here, it just needs to return a Boolean. And then, of course, it needs a different text because we're asking for the worst CMS. So that sounds about right. And then the other thing we need to do, we need to put this in our controller. I'm registering these handlers by hand right now because it's nice to show it to you. What you could also do is you could just loop through your code or your classes and find all the ones that are extended from the abstract handler. Yeah, it's we're not talking about a performance system here. Yeah, the class name. Yeah, I see it. Yeah. Where am I? There. So this is not the Hello World. This is the worst CMS request handler. Thank you. So I'm going to put this in our registry here. Okay. So now we can't try this stuff locally because Alexa will never reach our thing here. So we're just going to commit and push it real quick. Yeah, who cares? And find our terminal. So I'm going to just go onto that Docker container that's running the StripeCon website copy, and I'm going to check out that code and run dev build. So we don't have continuous integration in this sample. Oh, and we don't have a VPN. 1 second. Okay, I've got a really bad lag here. I'm sorry, it's going to take a second. So, okay. Our server just ran dev build, so it should know about the new controller. So let's do this. Alexa, start demo code.
Welcome to the SilverStripe connected version. What would you like to know?
What is the worst CMS?
WordPress.
Yeah, okay. So this is how you add different functions to it. So now let's do something useful with it. Let me check if we got the other stuff done. Yeah. So let's build a skill for this conference. When you build a skill, you need to figure out your voice model and the use case and everything. As a demo for today, I got the entire StripeCon website with its schedule. So what we're going to do is we're going to use all those nice data objects that Werner built. Like he went crazy with the model for the schedule instead of just putting it on the website. And that's nice for us because we can query all that data. And let's look at that model from Werner real quick to understand what we're doing. There. So we have here, we have a day, and a day then has slots, and slots then have talks, and talks then have speakers. So this is wonderful to query. And what we did then is we built ourselves a new skill here, which I already did because it's going to take too long. Yeah, and that was the internet. Ah, great. Okay, so we have the StripeCon skill down here. Okay. The problem why I keep switching between networks is that the Wi-Fi in here does not allow to use SSH or anything, and I need that to connect to the server and to the skills, but it should be working now again. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so here's our StripeCon skill. And of course, it needs an activation phrase. I started preparing for this talk 2 days ago, and I built it all, and then I started triggering it, and I noticed Alexa does not understand StripeCon. It would change it in StripeCon or StripeCoin. So I asked Werner if we could change the name of the conference. He wasn't open to that. So this skill is going to be called this conference, because Alexa understood that. And it has intents. One. This intent is called the time-based event query. And under here is different phrases that it might respond to. And now the difference to before is we have slots in here. So you see all those query time and query day slots. And those are like variables. So Alexa knows that if she hears this phrase, these spots in your phrase need to be replaced or need to be sent to your skill as a variable. And you can define the types of these. So we're down here. Let's get rid of this. I told her query date. Day is an Amazon date. Amazon date is a slot type that defines that it's going to return to you date. And it will do this even from words that you use. If you say tomorrow, it will give you the date of tomorrow to your skill. The second thing we have is the query time. And then we have a Boolean. Basically, that's one's details. And we built these into these query examples here. So let's try this out. Alexa, ask this conference what's coming up at 7 p.m.
It should be meet at the Hurigan. It starts at 1900 hours. That is the last event for the day. Would you like more details?
Yes.
Relax and enjoy typical Austrian Heritage specialities at Molnar's Hurigan in Krems.
So it got this information out of the StripeCon database and sent it to the skill, which is like a really nice setup you can do. Let's try some more. Alexa, ask this conference what's coming up tomorrow at 2:30 a.m.
This is a developer conference. Everyone is still sleeping at 2:30. The first event is coffee time at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so if you build a voice model, you need to build a lot of error handling in there. I just did one. Okay, so let's go through the code of what's happening behind the scenes. So our Alexa controller has a handler down here that's called Time-Based Event Query Request Handler. Nice name. That one, like you see, this is always the same pattern. This one responds to the time-based event query. And then we have the actual request coming in. And with the request comes come the slots that I defined. So the JSON that Alexa is sending to me is containing these variables. One of them is this once details variable that we didn't use yet. When she asked me if I want more details. If I say no, we just quit out of this whole response. So if we don't have a date, we'll just use today if the user didn't supply one. And this needs to be refactored, but for a demo it works. So what do? We go into Werner's model and we ask for the day filtered by the date that came in and pick the first one. And we make sure that there's actually slots on that day, because Werner had Thursday already in his schedule, and there was no events on that day. So I had to make sure that there's actually something going on that day. If not, I tell the user, I'm sorry, but StripeCon is only 2 days per year, and this is not one of them. So we do some error handling here. And then we use the time that the user specified, and we search for the slot that started right before that time. We just take the last one that's before that time. And if there is no slot that meets the criteria, we look for the first slot on that day. That's what you just heard when I asked her for tomorrow. And she says the first event is at 9, and it will just tell this to us. And then if we actually do find a slot that's usable, I wrote a little handler that gets the details. This is due to the model of the StripeCon website, because you have slots, and in those slots you can have talks. But lunch doesn't have a talk. So the description and the title for lunch are in the slot. But if we have a talk, they're in the talk that's in the slot. So I just built myself a little helper that gets the talk, gets the speaker, gets the description, removes the HTML, because Alexa doesn't need HTML markup around it. And then then we use this to build our response. So if the user didn't ask for details, we're going to build the response here. And at the end of our response, we're going to ask, would you like more details? And then what we do is we send back to Alexa this thing and tell her that the response to this thing that we just sent, this prompt, is supposed to be filling the once details slot. Like up till now, we only have the query date and the query time. And now she's going to, in the same intent, she's going to go back, so she maintains state. She knows, or she will send us the day and the time again. She remembers that for us. We don't need to do that. We don't need any session management on our side. And she's going to put once details in there as well. So then the user's going to come back, and if he said no, we'll just say OK, and we'll leave. And if the user said yes, we're going to go through all this again. And this time, we're going to return the description. So that's what you just heard when we did that. OK. This is, of course, just a proof of concept. You would have to fine-tune the voice responses. Like if you ask for something that's in the past, she shouldn't say it starts at. All that stuff that you're used to doing on a website, you need to do in a voice dialogue as well. And you need to pay way more attention to it, because you need to figure out every way a user could ask for it. Because if you don't think of it, she will not be able to handle it. And Amazon is not going to tell you that you're not able to handle it, because they're really scared of giving out what the user actually said. So all you get is the intents that you defined. You never get the actually spoken text. You only get the intents that you set up for them. So we don't know if the skill gets triggered, which of those phrases that we defined was actually used. So like here I have all these different ones. I mean, I can figure out which variables are passed in those slots, so I know it's one of those. But I don't know if the user asked for the program at or for the events at. I never get that information. Done. You see the slides don't contain anything, so it doesn't make much sense to give them to you. But I'm going to give you the code if you want to. It's just a building block to get started. Please do not use a skill with just this basic setup. It will not go through certification with Amazon. They test skills before they put them live. I can only use this because I'm in demo mode. And your skill needs to handle all the fallbacks. Like if she doesn't understand what you're saying, she needs to tell you, I'm sorry, please try again, and give you examples and all that. So this is just to show you the technology on how it connects. Amazon has a lot of documentation on how to build nice voice models. Just look at that. So, questions?
Stacy, yes?
You said that you don't get that feedback which specific question was asked, but what kind of feedback do you get from Alexa? Any kind of aggregate feedback or any kind of data?
Yes, they are experimenting with giving you aggregate information about what's going on, but it's not enough. What you need to do is you need to just look at users. What we do is we just let everyone in the company play around with it, and we look at what they do. The information they give out is not helpful enough. If you're a big enough skill, they do voice reviews with you. But this is something where your skill needs to be really important for them to do it, and even then they do it like once a year or something. So if you get started in building Alexa skills, you're on your own.
Just checking in demo. So you said about it being in demo mode. Do you get any extra information back?
No. No.
It's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. The information you get back, the most helpful stuff you get is in this console I showed you. So where's my mouse again? Never mind. In here, I showed you this test thing that has all the JSON that's sent back and forth. There's some additional JSON you get, like about the device state and all that. And the nice thing about this JSON is there's actually in there is at some point is the actual request that Alexa is going to send to your endpoint. So you just copy it out of here. You put it into your, RESTful server testing tool in PHP Storm, and you just send it off yourself, and you see the response. In order to do that, you need to disable the validation stuff. That's why I had that off. If this is on, your skill will not respond, because it's going to say it's a replay attack, or it's the wrong certificate, and so on and so on.
With going back to the intents, and this might sound a bit sort of cheeky, but could you not just write intents which are something like what and then squiggly brackets?
Good point.
Squiggly brackets.
Good point. No, there is, depending on in which language you work, there is something called the literal slot. Like you need to define those slot types. Remember how I said a date or a time or something? The US version of Alexa has the literal slot where it will take anything. And the international versions have something called search query. You can have exactly one of those slots, and it will just try to match what it found. Now, the sad answer about that is voice recognition with Alexa is good, but it's only good because she knows the context. It's because she knows how to expect a date at this point. If you tell her, like we tried doing it with movie names, and if you don't have a list of movie names in there, she has no idea what you're talking about. Like trying to get the skill to respond to StripeCon didn't work because she had no idea what that word is. So if you do general slots, you don't have a great experience. So you need to define those slots. There's built-in slot types like date, first names, cities, Austrian cities, German cities, US cities, food. There's now a slot type called movies. There's a slot type called actors. Amazon fills all those slots so that you can build voice models with them. And then there's a custom slot type. This custom slot type is what we used for the yes/no. So I build a custom slot type here, and then I supply it a list of the values that I expect. So this slot type is expecting yes or no, and I gave it some synonyms. I said, yeah, if the user says no, thank you, that's also no. So you see, you need to do all this. Alexa isn't that smart. You need to supply all this information for her if you're using something that's not built in. And no, not in this case. How I used it, you can actually have yes and no questions, but there's no slot type for yes no. Why? Because the slot types are supposed to be used in intent queries, and it doesn't make sense to build a sentence that contains yes or no as a variable. So I just misused that to just have one intent because I didn't want to implement state and everything today, and I just figured we're going to make it a lot easier. This is a common hack that you do. You just leave out the details thing, and you send it back to her, and she asks. That way you don't have to maintain anything. One other thing about the demo, it doesn't cost anything to do this. You can just sign up as an Amazon developer. You can put your skill in there, and if you put it on Lambda, it's free. Lambda has a free tier, and AWS doesn't charge you for a lot of things if you use them in correspondence with an Alexa skill. Like the voice engine I used to have Brian speak.
I don't know that.
Yeah. Brian is a voice from Amazon Polly, which is an engine Amazon has to play sounds, or a text-to-speech engine. And if you use Polly in your Alexa skill, you don't pay for it. So Amazon really wants to push Alexa, so you don't have to pay for a lot of those things. And they also give you AWS credits to play around with your skill if you publish it and so on. So all you basically need is an Amazon developer account. You don't even need a device. You can just install the Alexa app somewhere.
Populating the list, like you were saying about the movies, is that able to be done via an API?
Yes and no. All changes to the voice model, so everything that's not in your endpoint, everything that's in the voice model, needs to go through certification. So they just released a little while ago an API to do this, if you don't want to use the CLI or this, to fill the slots. But then you need to go through certification. So the example I had was the movies. We wanted to build a search engine for movie names. And the custom slot type only takes 50,000 names, which is not enough if you want to build a query for movies. So we figured we'll just take the top movies and we keep changing them depending on what's going on. And then we learned, yes, you have to go through certification every time you change something in there. So this is not something you would do dynamically.
If you've got a skill that's quite specific to a use case, like when you publish it, is it available on all devices? Do owners of a device decide which skills that they want to have recognized by their device?
Yes, you have to activate skills on the device, unless Amazon really likes your skill and connects it like our TV program and so on. But she will suggest skills. So they're working on service discovery, and she will actually suggest skills for you. But yes, service discovery is a big problem with Alexa skills. So you're not going to build a skill for your SilverStripe website and get more traffic or users. It's going to be an add-on that you tell your users about. You tell them you can also query Alexa for our information.
Can you have like private skills?
Yes. I think there's an enterprise model or something. The other thing you can do is you can just put everyone in your developer account. Yep.
Okay, any other questions left now? Yes, one.
Yes, so I was wondering, have you tried Google's voice? Do they have something similar?
Yes, they do. It's tied to Google Assistant and so on. I myself haven't programmed in it. We had an external company program something for us, and it's a little bit different from the setup you have. It's called, I think, activities with Google. And you need to do a lot more about displaying information as well, because Google Assistant on your phone will use text and images and so on. Alexa has this APL, it's called, the presentation language to show stuff on the display. But Amazon always says the display is just additional. Do not count on the user having the display. And so currently we're focusing on Alexa skills.
Thanks.
There is cross-compiling frameworks, if you want to call it that try to publish skills to the different systems. We looked at a few of them, and the systems are currently too different to make it really usable. You have like the minimal compatibility between all of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Johannes.